Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Torch Tales, Stories Behind the Hood. I'm your host, Frank Vargas, aka Traveling Frankie. You guys know how this works. I sit here, somebody sits there. We happen to have a conversation, and I'll post them somewhere. And that somewhere happens to be YouTube. And you guys will see clips here and there of on the other platforms. But one of the things that I was telling my guest, Josh Weston, and we're going to get to meet him and what he does and why he's here and why I think he's such a great guest for what I'm trying to do with Torch Cells and show everyone that there's so many other avenues in this highway called welding, trade, whatever you want to call it, right? Up to you to give it a name. Me, I just make things up as I go. Josh, thank you very much and good morning.
Oh, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited to have this conversation, albeit a
Cool.
little bit nervous because I don't know that I consider myself a welder. So I feel like I can
Well,
relate to you because I dabble in a lot of metalworking and
yep.
I don't have any official training or anything. I just picked it up because I needed to do it.
I see. So, because I know blacksmith, forging, all of that, right?
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
so you are using fire, you are
Mhm.
bending metal, you are working with metal, you are making things. At some point, you are gluing them together. That's
Y-
pretty much what I
That's
call
what I
welding.
call it too. It's metal glue.
That's every time someone's asking me like, what is welding? It's gluing things. The process might change, but at the end of the day, you grab two things, you glue them together, and they'll stay glued forever. That's the
Yeah,
idea.
yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
that's cool. So, Josh, you were saying that before, just so you know, I'll go left and right, top to bottom. I'll interrupt my guest, and I come back to the original question. So, just bear with me, all right?
Perfect.
You were saying that you were just traveling and you were opening another location in what was it, North Carolina?
Yeah, we so I run a business called the Dragon Forge Experience. Well, I run two businesses with my wife, and one of them is the Dragon Forge Experience. And what we do is we make life-sized fire-breathing dragon forges. So they're shaped like a dragon, they look like a dragon, and they actually spit fire like a dragon. And we use that as a forge to be able to give people the experience of what it is like to be a blacksmith. And while we don't necessarily call it a class, we call it experiences because in a short bit, it might be your first introduction to using a hammer and working with fire and hot steel. So we try to serve it up to you in easily digestible segments, but you leave with this piece that you got to work on.
I
And that
see.
ranges anything from like little chisel work on a rune pendant to magic wands to even knives. And this weekend we launched for the very first time swords. So we've been working our way up the ladder of items. So it's
Okay, all
really
right.
it's really quite cool. It's really quite fun.
So,
And
and
we
how long are these experiences?
They range between 20 minutes and an hour and a half.
Okay,
Unusual, somebody off the street who's never used a hammer before, they're not going to hold up to an 8 hour class. We
okay,
find that
got
about an hour is the general. If we can keep it under an hour, you'll survive. You'll be fine. Your arms might be a little bit sore. You might get a blister, but you'll be able to do it. And so
gotcha.
we try to keep it in that range.
So I guess this under an hour experience, at least it gives them enough of an idea if they want to keep going, and then I guess take an advance and so on, so on.
Yes, exactly. Our business focuses around just being that initial spark, that excitement that gets people thinking, "Wow, that was really fun. I want to do that." And then what we do is because we're at Renfest mostly, is we hire local smiths from the area, and then anybody who goes, "Where do I learn more?" We can just hook them up with our staff that works it, and they can actually then go and teach them the class so they can keep making money through the year when we leave. And that community of people who got interested can go further into that trade if they want to. And a
Huh,
lot
that's
of
pretty
times they
cool.
go, "This is too hot. It's not for me. It was really fun. I'll come do this every year, but I don't want to do it." But it might spark them into making in something else.
That's
And
that's that's 100%.
yeah, and
But
that's really
but
important to know how to do things for your mind, your brain, your long-term health.
for
Um,
sure,
yeah, yeah,
for sure.
which I
No,
don't have to
I do.
I don't have to tell you that at all. You know that that's important.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just being an able mind and able body, and then tie those two together. It does things that you can't even comprehend or measure, actually.
Yeah.
So most people just kind of take that for granted. But you also said two businesses. So that's the forging, and what's the other one?
So the other one is it's Bavarian themed. It's very similar. It's Bavarian Blacksmith Experience, and that's in Frankenmuth, Michigan. And it's very similar to the Dragon Forge experience, except for that it's not Ren Fair based. Actually in a shopping mall doing this
Okay.
a very similar thing. But because we're in a permanent facility, we actually can offer classes, so we can be the beginning spark and then the intermediate.
So
So
so wait. You are in a shopping mall next to, I don't know, the shoe store, and are you guys can able to
yeah.
do flames and everything at the shopping mall?
Yes, yeah, we're across the aisle from a bookstore, Charlene's Book Nook, and we're right next to a shop called the Stadium, which I affectionately call it a nerd store, being a nerd myself. But they sell trading cards and
Oh,
board
okay.
games and comics and things like that. So we have like kind of and we're like right off the food court. So
All
yeah,
right.
and we're able to have open flames. We've that's the weird thing of having to be me, is I have to know a lot about a lot, not even just a little about a lot. I have to know a lot about a lot, because if you don't, then you have to pay for somebody to know all these things or come in with expertise, and that costs a lot of money as well. And we do have to do that at times, but yeah, a large part of my job is engineering the shop flow and the layout, and making sure that our spaces are safe and our customers can come in and enjoy what we do and not have to worry about a mess, or and I have to be able to make sure my smiths can have an organic flow and a safe movement of the shop, and we have the heat ventilation, and we have the proper fume ventilation for
Gotcha.
everything that we do. So, but
Gotcha.
we keep the grind shed off site though. We take it out to a different area.
Okay. All right. I'm glad you mentioned that. So where are you from?
I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania. I'm from
Okay.
the Rust Belt, and I grew up the Rust Belt and the Snow Belt at the same time. And
Okay.
it's kind of weird. I felt like I was born in the wrong area of the country, but it was kind of the right area of the country and the wrong area of the country at the same time. I grew up, all I wanted to do was surf. I wanted to be a surfer and
Oh,
an artist. And but I grew up working on farms, which is how I
the,
first,
the, the
learned to
lack the
weld.
lack of the lack of water makes it very difficult.
Well, I grew up on a Great Lake, on Lake
Uh,
Erie. So
okay.
I actually surfed Lake Erie, and I've surfed most of the Great Lakes now. But I
Okay.
moved to South Florida, which is where you're at. I went to art school in Fort Lauderdale.
Holy crap! That's exactly where I live.
Yeah,
Yep. That's
yeah, it's,
that's.
right off 17th Street Causeway. It's not there anymore, but yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Right before the bridge. I remember.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That is. They had a huge culinary school. I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 I got a good story about that too.
Okay.
Um,
Go ahead.
I was taking biology there, and our biology professor goes, "You can either, for your final grade, you can do a 10-page project on some boring biology, Florida biology, native Florida biology, or you can do a project based in your discipline." So I was in graphic design, so I made a stamp book of Florida water samples and bacteria in it. But this woman was in the culinary program in biology class. She drove down to Key West and she got Florida key limes, and she made key lime pie for everyone in the thing. Best key lime pie I've ever had in my life was in that class. And it always just stays in my mind so much how cool that was and how nice it was for that teacher to do that. Not because it made it an easy grade, but what
Yeah.
it did is it shifted our mindset to it didn't force us into a write a paper to get a grade. It was, how can you
Go
incorporate
beyond.
this topic into your field and make it relevant to your life? And that
Yeah.
made it more exciting.
No, that is a pretty cool story for sure. It's thinking outside the box,
Yeah,
just because you think the parameters are this, like no, in fact, I'm gonna go get something in QS and I'm gonna make this happen.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was so
So that
cool.
so so that is pretty cool. And what made you come to South Florida and study there when you had other places you could go to, especially coming from the Rust Belt and that area?
Uh, the temperature, the color of the water. Now
All right,
I did
enough
feel a
said.
little bit misguided because I thought there would be better surf or more frequent surf, but South
Not
Florida
it.
is not
Yeah,
a hotbed for surfing. So I still found myself driving, mostly hours. But I actually lived up in Delray when I was there, and I lived pretty close to 40th Street off of Spanish River Boulevard, and that ended up being one of my favorite places to surf because it wasn't super crowded. The waves weren't super big. Um, but I could walk a little bit north and get to rocks, and I could walk a little bit south and get to like a shifting sandbar area. And
yeah.
of course, you could drive up to
Co-
Sebastian
or
or to
Coco,
Jupiter.
Coco. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Coco. I had long hair, and I hit the bottom, hit one of those little low reefs in Coco, and I ripped a chunk of my scalp, hair and skin and all, about that big off the top of my head, and that's how I went from having long hair to short hair.
Well, hey, I wish that was my story. My was just my dad, left me with no hair. So yeah. Uh,
Yeah, I live in South Carolina now. I'm in Charleston, and I've got my
oh,
office
there you
has
go.
surfboards all around. It's a
Nice.
messy place here. Skateboards, I skate a lot. Keeps me
Cool.
young, keeps me fun, I think. I don't know.
I totally get it. I totally get it. So tell me a little bit about you growing up and and we're going to gradually get to what you do, how you got to it, because you said that you are self-taught.
Yeah,
Um,
so well, I think when you grow up on a farm, or in farm country, I didn't live on a farm, but I worked on farms. Um, there was a horse ranch out in the middle of nowhere that I worked summers at, and on the weekends when we weren't busy, us young guys would raid the metal scrap pile, and we could use the welding equipment and the forging equipment for doing the farrier
gotcha.
work and stuff. And we were always making knives, Bowie knives, throwing knives, machetes, things like that. And that's where I really got into um, the blacksmith work, and that's when I did my first welding too. And of course, it was all like nuts and bolts figurines and making tractors. We
Yeah, yeah.
take the washers and bolts, and I did not. I don't remember a MIG welder there. They probably did have one. Actually, they may not have. Farms
That
rely
was going to be
really
my
heavily on
question. It was
stick
probably
welding.
stick. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I learned to weld on a stick welder, which is it's tricky. It's fun, but honestly, I look back at that as a really good thing because if you can operate a stick welder, you can move into any welding at all. It can be a real pain in the butt to get that arc when you're first
That
learning with that. Get that thing to stick.
I know. That's no, that is true, and that's what I figure that you were
Yeah.
exposed to that early on. And so you move away. You're not working on farms anymore.
No, I'm
What are
surfing.
you
I'm
doing?
living
Because
that concrete city life.
yeah, sure, sure. So is that when you're also doing digital design and all that? Because
Yeah, yeah. I was always an artist growing up, and I went to a vocational school my senior year of high school, and that got me into a graphic design program. And that's when I saw I could make a living with art, not just be an artist a starving artist, which I've grown to hate that term. We don't need that term. You can make a lot of money as an artist. It's just you might have to change your mindset a bit. And I
I
see
like that.
welding as an art. That's what I do. I'm not really a welder or a fabricator. I'm not an engineer. I dabble in all of those things. I'm an artist. That's what I do. So I do art welding. And
That's pretty cool.
so that vocational school really set the tone for my life and got me where I wanted to go. And then initially I was set to go to the Pittsburgh Art Institute, and then I kind of was like, I want to go warmer. I want to be by surfable
Somewhere in
water.
between. Yeah.
Yeah, so I went down there, and I also had a job hookup down there that I moved for, that I had I apprenticed, or apprenticed, I don't know what I call it. Yeah, something like that, at a church.
A helper. Yeah.
Yeah, and delivered pizza, and then I went to art school there, and so I learned creative thinking. I learned a lot more about illustration and planning and design, and line and repeatability, and the rules. And I learned the rules of the design. And I had a couple professors who were like, "Great, now let's learn how to break all the rules and how to do it in a way that you can do something unique and creative and conceptually awesome." And that just had a massive impact on my life. And I look back at that education, and every day I still use what I learned there, and
Some
I'm
of that.
20
Yeah.
years out of college. So
It never goes away. It's like riding a bike.
yeah.
So, but at this moment that you are learning and applying all this knowledge, this is what you're thinking that just the main career, that the main thing is going to be. right? You still haven't dabbed into blacksmithing or forging or anything like that. That's still not even on the tunnel yet as a vision.
No, no, I was
Yeah.
going into honestly, I was trying to make it into print design and advertising, which was busy dying at the same time.
Yeah,
I
it was
was
like being a DJ. Yeah, it's like everyone can
Yeah,
just play their own music. Yep.
yep. And so I went into was going into print work. I worked at a couple print shops doing odd jobs and file setups. I fortunately I took a lot of my electives in web design, and which was really good because right after I graduated, print tanked, just massively tanked, and the rise of digital media and web design hit.
Yep.
And I ended up a few years out of college working for a well, first I actually started working for churches doing design for youth groups and college
Oh,
groups.
really?
My
Huh.
first two jobs were doing that, and I applied media design, but I designed club flyers. I took the South Florida club scene and I applied that sort of designed mind aesthetic
Yeah.
to church programs. And I would help church
Very
programs, youth
similar.
college.
It
Yeah, we
very
would grow
similar.
from
Yeah.
like a 30 kid group to like 400 to 800 people on the mailing list within like a year and a half to 2 years. Because
That's awesome.
the program that I did with a guy that I worked for, I worked two places with him, one in South Florida in Boca, and then he took a position up in Michigan. And then right after I graduated, he goes, "Hey, do you want to do that again up here?" And I'm like, "I don't have another offer." I don't, it was, he actually offered me more money than the jobs in South Florida were
Yeah.
offering.
So the
So
answer
I
is
moved up.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I moved up there to do that after art school. And then I worked at that for a couple years, and I switched out of, out of the church world into, I worked in-house marketing for a custom fire truck and military vehicle manufacturing company in Charlotte, Michigan. Yeah,
So what? So
Spartan chassis.
they were doing this for like government accounts or something or
Yeah, they do it for all over the world. They build custom fire trucks, which is really
hey,
cool. So I got to
I
work in
know.
that department. I designed ads for them, magazine ads, website, trade shows. Got to work. I designed the tags for the fire trucks and the front grills and things like that. It was really kind of a cool job,
It
and they
is.
let me play. They just let me
So
play.
you know what? It's once someone sees someone else's imagination, and you hire them for that job, and then just let them do the job until you're not happy. Then you
Yeah,
go, hey, you're going way too far. Just come right
yeah.
back. But let them be. So I'm guessing by this time you still don't have a family because I know now you're married and you have what, four girls or
I have five. At
five?
this point in time, no. By this time, I had two kids. I had my first kid right out of college,
Oh,
and
okay.
at this point, by the time I was at Spartan Chassis, I was already divorced the first time, and I
I
had two
see.
kids, so I was paying child support. It was
Oh,
actually a pretty rough period of time
dude,
for me.
been there, done that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
Lost a house, spent a couple months sort of homeless, and yeah,
I
it was an interesting transition time, but it made me reevaluate some things, and ultimately it was good for me. And you rework yourself. I think that's the trick. If you rework yourself and you work on improving, it doesn't have to put you behind. You can get back ahead. Don't ever give
oh
up.
Oh, for sure, and I'm glad you say that because definitely, we've all seen the bumper sticker. What doesn't kill you make you stronger, and blah blah blah. And you got each journey, you got to go through it, and definitely. But that's the trick. If you got something out of it, because if it's even a failed relationship, it's never just one-sided. You got to come out
Yeah,
saying, I messed up in these certain things. I can get better on these other things. Just like a job, you get fired from a job.
yeah,
Everything, someone doesn't hire you ever again because of, whatever. So it is very important to kind of have that time for yourself and go back and say, all right, where did I go wrong? What can I fix for the next adventure, right?
yeah.
And we all know that.
Yeah. And that's the same for your welding or your art too. You have to be
That
able to step back and look and evaluate and provide yourself with an honest critique of what your work is. And quite frankly, if I hadn't developed a skill set for that, and I really learned that in art school. Art school was brutal. in the critiquing, and I
All
think
right.
it's really great to learn that because they will
That
just
it
shred
is.
you.
It
And
is. So how do you go now? You're doing this. Now you're kind of rearranging your life,
uh,
going through that first marriage and on kids and somewhat homeless for a little bit, whatever version that is.
yeah.
I trust me, I get it. How do you go now to finding a new family, finding a new career, and now growing both of those together?
Uh, I poured myself into my work. I didn't wait to get a raise to do better. I just did better. Every project I ate it up and I pushed it. And I would follow my creative director's brief. And if I didn't like it, I'd still do it his way. And then in my off time, I'd do it my way. And so I create these alternate world ads that were really engaging and exciting. Well, one day he came in, he was working late, or I think I had come in early, and he came by my desk. I didn't hear him come in. I was wearing headphones, and he goes, "What are you working on?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's just before hours. I thought about this ad in this other way." And he goes, "This is really awesome. Don't ever hide this again and make this the new thing." They brought the president of the company in, and they'd kind of been doing these pretty standard ads about the fire trucks. And what I did is I took this graph paper and I took all these photos and I made them these ripped elements, and I made myself the mindset of the fireman in the firehouse, looking through a magazine, clipping out all the features of a truck he wanted, and then pasting them together to make a new fire truck. And that was
And it's,
with like scribbled on notes of like, I like this kind of light, I like the wheels at this height, I want this at this dimension, because we make custom fire trucks. And they're like, I don't know why we didn't think about it that way. And so um, it caused a stir across the fire truck advertising world that kind of changed within a year. Three other fire truck companies had shifted to try to replicate my style, which was really cool. So I
it
was
is
there
really
for just
cool.
about 3 years, but my work started to get noticed by an agency out of Ann Arbor, Detroit area. So they were based in Detroit. But they had a digital office in Ann Arbor, and they offered me a job that was a pretty substantial raise. So I took that job in Ann Arbor and really pushed there.
But
And
at this time, you're just designing. You're still not. You don't have a hammer in your hands. You're not doing any of that. You're still not really have gone into what specifically you do now.
no, yeah, still
No,
another decade to go before well, almost a decade. Probably,
really.
yeah, maybe 5 more years. My ex had been while I was at that other agency. I had met my wife now, and that was really nice, and she was really supportive with the creative work. She is not an artist, but she's an art appreciator, and that
Oh,
really
okay.
helped. And I would say that she's also an art enabler, which is really awesome for
It is
for
very
me because I
important to have
needed
someone
that.
in your corner. Yep, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So, but however, this whole time I was locked in this really terrible custody battle.
Gotcha.
So my ex had actually gotten custody, or not custody, but she'd gotten permission to move to South Carolina.
I see.
So that forced me to have to find a job down there because I wanted to raise my kids. And as long as I could live within 35 miles of her, I could keep 50-50 custody.
Cool.
So she moved, and then within 3 or 4 months, my wife and we moved, and we had our first kid together. And we ended up having three together. So I had five, all girls total.
I
Um,
kind of, yeah, that I saw. I'm like, man,
yeah,
that's I'm gonna tell you, that's gotta be intense, dude. Five
yeah,
girls. I mean,
yeah.
six with a wife. Yeah.
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 I've never even had a male dog. Everything I've ever had has been girl. So,
Okay,
but we
that's
moved
funny.
down to Hilton Head first, and I worked at a really creative agency called BFG, which I think has turned into something like Nine Rooftops. I don't know what they're called now, but my main clients were the RJ Reynolds, Camel Tobacco, Natural American Spirits. I worked for Harry Potter, Illy Isimo, uh, Coca-Cola. I kept a side business. My wife and I kept a side business. When I left the agency in the Detroit area, they didn't want to stop working with me.
Huh.
So I was at the new agency, as long as my projects were under $100,000, they didn't need me to give them to the agency. They were like, do whatever you want with them. We don't care. So
Nice.
I kept all that work individually under that price range, and we cleared our debt off, and I recovered from losing a house through the divorce and everything.
Good
And it
for
was a
you.
nice reset time. But I worked my ass off. I worked during the day. I worked during the night. And it was at that point in time, another round of custody battle started.
What?
Yeah, oh, it's crazy. And I don't want to spend the time
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about that too much.
yeah. No, no,
Um,
I get it. I get it.
but it was a motivational factor because it was for 16 years I was in and out of family court. And during that time, my work was stressful. It was fulfilling because I was working creatively, but as I progressed up the ladder and became a creative director, it was less hands-on work. And I
Of course.
wanted to use, I'm a
Yep.
hands-on guy. To the point where I broke my finger a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and I haven't taken a day off yet. I'm still working with that finger because it's just such a
Hey,
part of my life.
you just gotta push through it.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can't delegate everything. Yeah.
So I got into blacksmithing when before we had moved to South Carolina. We had lived on a property that had a scrap pile of metal. Just
Okay,
in the
I
woods.
see.
I found the scrap pile in the woods and I went right back to old habits. And it was like I became a child again. And I was exploring with the metalwork and the grinding, and I hadn't purchased a welder yet until I gotten into blacksmithing again first, and then I got into welding when I wanted to make Damascus. And so I started taking my anvil to the agency in my SUV, and I pull out my anvil and my forge at lunch, and I would forge in the parking lot.
Are
And
you
then my
kidding?
forge would cool off by the end of the day, and I'd reload it up at night, and I'd go home and I'd forge for another hour or so before dinner. And it was a stress relief that became therapeutic for me, because as court ramped up and I had to present for cases and like
Yeah,
defending
yeah.
this and that, instead of thinking and worrying and stressing about that all night, I was actually giving my
You're
brain a
releasing.
healthy
Yep.
stress. I was problem solving and thinking and excited about, oh, how am I going to work this detail out? And how am I going to forge that? And how am I going to make this happen? And so it became this happy sleep as opposed to a stressful, fitful sleep, which allowed me to mentally continue to be able to work well during the day and to be
Correct.
able to keep the craft going.
Yeah, no, that's I can totally see that. It's almost like a stress reliever at the same time, and you're just being physically involved with something. It's like exercising, riding a
Yeah,
bike, running. It just adds, it releases the same chemical reactions in your brain. So I
yeah.
totally get that. And you still now, when do you make the decision? You have practiced enough, you've hit that anvil enough to say, how do I turn into a business? How do I make money out of this?
Sure.
Was it because some of the guys saw you at lunch and said, "Hey, that's a cool looking raw knife. Let me buy that from you."
Yeah, I did start selling the stuff that I was making right away. And in fact, very rarely even have inventory at my house because I just sell it. I sell everything.
Yeah.
Uh, but I was more forced into it than anything. The agency that I worked for, um, how do I delicately say this? They double they double booked their books, and
Okay. Got it.
they made some mistakes with a couple clients,
Okay.
and they got audited, and they lost half their workforce within two of the big clients pulled out within 2 weeks.
Got it.
And so with the loss of those contracts, half of us lost our jobs.
Mm,
So in the meantime, while I was picking up more contract work, I had to ramp up my metal work. And at the time, living in South Carolina, what I found sold the best was oyster shuckers, which was
mm.
a little bit different than blade making, because I really like to make swords and knives, but they don't sell as fast. But buy something that people need, that they eat with, that they love, and we love our oyster roast here.
Oh
So
yeah.
that was more forging. That had to be. It was less about just making a knife or forging a tip and then grinding it. I really had to know what I was doing to manipulate metal. I got involved with the blacksmith guild, and then it was like, well, I want to make jigs and I want to make templates to make these things faster. So I needed to put pieces of metal together to make that work. And
Gotcha.
I moved into making Damascus, which is you got to tack your layers together. So I picked up a little tiny stick welder that did the 16th inch rods from Harbor Freight or something like that. And I
Yeah, yeah.
just, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
was using it to do the little welds and, you know, grind them, build them up. And then from there, it just kind of, I stayed in contract design about 50% of the time and pushed my blacksmithing skills to try to make it work.
And you're still
And
making all this blacksmithing at home, right? You know, now you
yeah,
have
yeah, in
bought
my
a few more
garage.
things, a few more hammers, and like now you're like,
Yeah,
okay, I'm making some money out of this.
yeah, one car garage, just doing it out of a one car. And
Gotcha.
everything's
And
on everything's on wheels, you
of,
know.
when it's
'Cause
that heavy and it's only a one-man job, yes, you have to do it right
yeah,
from the get-go, and you have to make sure this thing can move so you can have some space left.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. I
yeah,
picked
no,
up. I had a neighbor who was a president of the South Carolina Federal Credit Union, and
okay.
he wanted a big metal sculptural piece. I had been on Forged in Fire. You know, so I had a couple appearances on TV, and he goes, I want work from you before you get known. And so I hadn't really done metal sculptural work. I'd done carving, and I'd done like clay and forming sculpture and epoxy sculpture work, but I had never really done metal fabricating sculpture work. But I built this sailboat that was like 6.5 feet wide by 5.5 feet tall, and it looked like it was coming out of the wall. It was very like it was a really extreme relief sculpture, so it was about a foot deep
Into
as
from the
well
wall.
visually.
Gotcha.
And I forged the wooden texture bars, the steel bars that I used to make as wood panels for the ship, for the sailboat, and little portholes. And I made a custom air return out of bronze that looked like a diver's mask. So it was all this
That,
sea themed stuff. And it
that is
was all
pretty
stuff
cool.
that I had never done. And of course, I was like, yeah, of course I'll do that.
Of,
I
of
can do that. I didn't know I could do that.
Now,
So,
you have a picture of this, right? Because I want you to share this picture with me so I
yes.
can then ask when I'm editing this, I want to make sure that I put it on the screen.
Yeah, I'll send you some pictures of it. And he's moved
Yeah.
twice. We had to reinforce his wall. It was so heavy. He was building a house. I was like, you're going to have to build this wall like this, or it
For
won't
that.
hold it. So I think I'm actually going to see it. He's moved to a new house, and next week I have dinner with him again.
That's
And
cool.
I'm going to get to see my artwork at his new place. But I did a bunch of stuff for his house, and I went, man,
Yeah.
this is really cool. This is really fun.
Yeah.
Um, the
So
next
now,
year,
go ahead.
I had an opportunity. A blacksmith friend of mine called from the Ren Fair, and he goes, I'm quitting." He went through a custody battle. His life was too stretched out, and he got custody of his kids. And he goes, "I'm not making enough money at it. I'm done." And he goes, "Do you want to do it?" I'm like, "I don't really want to be a demo smith, but if they're willing to do this, I've been doing music shows in bars where I've
Okay.
been forging at bars and little events." And instead of just forging myself, I found that people actually paid more money to get to swing that hammer.
Yep.
So
Makes sense.
yeah, and I was doing that on like Saturdays. I could go to a bar on Saturday morning or Saturday evening and forge for 3 or 4 hours. They'd put me on a tab. I could drink for free when I was done.
All right.
Um, but then I'd leave with like, you know, $400 to $800 from a few hours of just screwing around with people. And it was so much fun.
I know
People love
that's
it.
almost
The
like
smiles that we put on people's faces from that.
it's almost like
It's
being in a band. You know, you go play your gig and they give you an open tab and you still come out with a couple $100 plus all the $400 you drank. Yeah.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. And if I sell a
that,
few oyster shuckers or a couple knives while I'm there, then I might make over 1,000.
that
You
is
know?
pretty cool. And what was the transition now when you said, all right, I'm going to leave my garage. I'm going to go find a place. Let's go open whatever that was, if it was the shopping center first. Like how did that come about?
It was
Did you already have enough business to support that, or you said, you know what, we need to do this regardless?
no, it was the Ren Fair is when that
Mm,
happened. is I presented an idea to the owner of the Ren Fair to let me work with the customers instead of doing a demo. And he was like, we'll do a trial. So in 2019, I did a trial run and a handoff year with the blacksmith that was there. And it went well enough. It was not easy. I built a real shitty dragon. It was mostly a silhouette of metal shapes along a fence that had a 3D neck that turned out in a real square boxy head. And I burned through an entire 100-pound propane tank in a day because it was so inefficient. But the concept worked. But you had to use about 90% of your imagination to really believe that that was a dragon.
Yep.
And I was still using that little 16th-inch rod stick welder at that time. Still hadn't upgraded to a MIG welder through that skull. Oh, I had borrowed a MIG welder for the sculpture project. So at this point, this is, of course, 2019. What none of us know is that COVID's
Oh,
about to hit.
right.
Now, my thought was, if I could run this Ren Fair 8 weeks a year, if I could do
Okay.
enough business, that could cover half of my year, half of what I needed to
Okay.
make. So
Got
I
it.
could continue to work half the time as a contract designer and stay in that world, and half the time as a blacksmith knife maker. And that
Gotcha.
was going to be enough for me. I was okay with that. That was fine with me. I didn't need to be full time either one. I just needed to
Yeah.
cover
Yeah.
the money that I needed to make.
Yep.
And that was the way my wife was like, that sounds great. Let's do that. Well, we did
Now,
it.
is she what? And sorry, when she also has another job, or she's
Yeah.
also this is what?
Yeah. My wife she's an attorney.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, not anymore. Now she runs the company with me. So
Okay. Cool. Cool.
yeah,
That's
she
awesome.
keeps her
That's
licenses in 2 states though. But she's um and she's awesome. She's awesome. She has a lot of skills in all of the areas that I don't have skills.
that's
So
the
we're
yin yang
very
effect, that.
complementary.
And
Yeah.
your daughters, having 5 daughters, are anyone into arts, welding, anything
Uh,
related?
all of them. So my oldest is going in. She's in dental. She's going to be in pre-dental right now. And while
Okay.
she doesn't think of herself as an artist, she is quite capable. The rest of them are all pretty heavily into art. They've all spent time with me in the shop. Right about the time they get 12 to 14, they
Yeah, I
grow a
don't want to
little
be
less.
with that, regardless of. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're like, no,
Yeah.
it's too hot and sticky out there. I'd rather go do this other thing. Um, but they all have skills with a hammer. They all like to work the shop. They all help out with things. They help me sculpt the dragons. They're it's a family business, and
That
they're
is.
involved.
How are
Um,
you? What are the what hours of the day? What's the schedule at the shop? Like, do you go there every single day? Are you there?
I still work out of my garage today. That's my main job. I'm sitting in my art studio office right now, and then on the other side of the wall is my shop. I don't live near any of my locations.
Alrighty. So
I'm in
those
Charleston,
locations.
South Carolina. My closest location is Charlotte, North Carolina, which is 3.5 hours from here. Our
Gotcha.
Texas
I,
location that I go to is 17 hours from my house, and our Michigan location that's open all year is 15 and a half hours from my house.
so the Michigan, it's the only one that is open all year.
Yeah, at this time, yeah.
Gotcha. And so who's there running these things? And
I
and
have
so
a
the other ones, yeah.
Yeah, I have a crews. Each crew we hire locally. So in Michigan, I hire people from the area and I train them. And now I have a guy that works for me that trains people. So I've trained him
Okay.
and now he trains others. And we've hired a manager and she's now been with us for 3 years. Her husband works for us and he's been with us for 2 years. Um, I found a guy in Arizona working at the Arizona Renaissance Festival for me. I hired him and moved him to Michigan, and he's our lead grinder. He works at all of my locations, so he
Got
goes
it.
from Michigan to He's in North Carolina right now, and in January he'll go to back to Arizona for 8 weeks, and then he spends most of the year in Michigan. So I
So
do video checkups with them and I just keep
got
them
it.
rolling. I keep them going. And once they're going, I move on to improving everything that they get to work with. I get to work on the dragons. I get to draw them. I get to illustrate them. I get to fabricate them. I get to install them and they get to work with them.
Okay. And are they so are they just holding classes? Are they also doing commission work?
Hmm.
Like you can still reach out to you and say, hey, I just want a piece that looks like whatever, and
Yeah.
you can guys can work with the client and make it happen.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. And we encourage the commission work for them because it's extra money that they can make.
Oh, okay, cool. Now, how many Renaissance shows do you still attend a year?
We do 3.
You do 3. And how long are those shows not typically?
We do a minute. Our We do at least 8-week shows, so they're 2 months. The Arizona one runs 9 weekends.
Got it. And being now self-taught and doing all these things, and like you said earlier, definitely a an artist, not just a metal artist, but you can make a very decent living as long as you're also open to new ideas, new processes, and just think outside the box, literally thinking
Yeah.
outside the box. How much has social media helped you tying all these things together?
Tremendously. Uh, it is huge with keeping us going. Instagram initially was really helpful for me personally, sharing my work, becoming popular on that. It did help that I had a couple TV appearances that kind of got me a little bit of a fan base boost. But
Okay.
I was kind of growing already and had a decent following by the time I had gone on to Forged in Fire, and I did Knife or Death as well. And I don't know, a lot of people don't realize this, but I've made quite a few knives for Naked and Afraid
Oh,
and Naked and
really?
Afraid
No.
XL. Yeah, I've got a bunch of bushcraft friends, and I love making knives. I don't even charge those people. I just like they call me up and they're like, "I'm going on the thing," and I'm like, "What do you need?"
That is pretty cool.
Yeah,
That is pretty cool. And how did you get on the TV show?
I just filled out an online form,
Oh,
and just answered a casting call.
that easy? Yeah.
It was that easy. It's not even kidding.
Damn.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
And how long were you in the show? Like, the whole process when they said yes to you and now you're out of the
Uh,
show.
it took it took a few months from when I first took the call to I think I took the call in May or June, the first call, and I filmed in November.
Huh. What do you think about the show? What was your experience? Would you do it
I
again?
loved it. It was really, really stressful. And the first time I was on, I went to the end, but I lost, and it was really devastating. Not just because I lost, but because the choices that I made it really easy to edit the show as if I did not know how to sharpen a knife, which for a knife maker trying to make it is devastating.
Ah.
I took out a line of credit to buy equipment afterward because I was
Oh,
like, it
just
doesn't matter
because of
how you
that?
do, everybody makes money after they've been on the show. It tanked me. My business disappeared. I was selling high-end knives. I was selling a $800 to $1,200 knife every 2 weeks. I went 3.5
After that.
months without selling a knife after that
Oof.
episode aired.
Holy crap. That's how much
Yeah,
an effect it
yeah.
had.
It
That it,
almost made a second divorce.
sorry, I'm just laughing because it just sounds funny.
No, I
Yeah.
say that in a humorous way. Obviously,
Yeah, no,
it
of
didn't,
course.
but you
Yeah.
know that was like the stress of that situation. And people think, oh, it's just a show. These people are like these characters, and they've been on TV. That's so awesome. Being on TV can actually be more detrimental than just continuing your work. It's very risky. It is very risky.
I have a few friends that were on that show, Metal Shop Masters on Netflix.
Yeah, I love that show though. That's one of my favorites. I loved it.
Well, but it's the same thing you're saying.
Yeah,
Every one of them have said that they probably wouldn't do it again
yeah, yeah.
because some of them were kind of depicted as the evil person, or like they didn't know what they were doing, or
I
and
know
all these,
Leah.
yeah, and all
Yeah.
these other things. So, David Madero, Stephanie Hoffman, and Ray Ripley, and all these. Yeah, it's they
Ray
have
Ripley won the jackpot on that show.
yeah.
She's just she just shot off.
Yes, yes. So definitely, he helps, but it's not what most people just think behind doors. There's a lot of
No,
moving parts, and they can make you look however they end up thinking that you should look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what the contract reads. The producers actually can choose the results. Doesn't have to be accurate.
Huh. I
Yeah.
see. See, there you go. Where would you like to see? So are you monetizing in social medias now? Do you actually are getting something here and there?
Yeah, I'm still doing pretty good on. I mean, my Instagram's kind of plateaued over the years. I hit 20,000 followers like 5 years ago, and I'm maybe up to 23,000. You know, so it's really hard to grow on Instagram organically now. And as a knife maker, it, we've got such massive restrictions on us that it
Yeah.
is almost
What does that
stopped
mean?
entirely.
What does that
But
mean?
with Dragon Forge experience, we're booming on TikTok right now, and we're doing really well. And we don't play up the sword and knife so much as we talk about the forging experience of what we're selling in the dragons. So our dragons are kind of like a real flashy thing, our fabricated dragons, um, which is really probably what you noticed in my work more than anything else is those steel dragons that I make.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Correct.
so those seem like those are the hero of our business, right? Because we theme everything around these dragons. But the truth is, in the story, the hero is the customer. And when you come, what you get to do, you feel awesome. And that is our goal, is to just provide a setting that you want to be in that makes you be able to leave the world that you're in. But when you leave, you're the hero. And that's kind of the trick behind it is, you know,
That is pretty cool. Do you attend shows like, I don't know, Fab Tech? Have you ever been to a Fab Tech show? Do you even know what
no,
that is?
I go to knife and blade shows mostly. So here's the thing, I don't really consider myself a welder. I feel like a hack. Like even being invited to come talk to you, I have this sort of like what do they like imposter syndrome going on right now? Or I'm like, should I even be here? You know?
No, but see that you'd be surprised because it's all like a show, let's say like Fab Tech. There's so many tools and so many things, from forging to presses to you name it, things that it's like every single tool, anything related for any
Yeah.
one of the trades on
I should
steroids. I
go.
mean,
When
it's
is FabTech?
so it's actually happening in Orlando in about 3 weeks, 2 weeks from now.
No kidding.
It's every year. This is the first time that it's happening in Florida. Usually it's Chicago or Vegas or Atlanta, stuff like
That's
that.
really close. I can get to Orlando in 5.5 hours.
Well,
Does it go during the week or is it just a weekend show?
it starts on a Tuesday. Um,
Perfect.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's
That's
the
even better for me.
15, 16, 17 of this month, I think. Um, but yeah, if there's not a single thing that how do I say this? If you use any tool, if you've ever seen any tool,
It's
if
there.
you have, it's there. Not only that, they're actually showing it. You get to the relationships you get to build with so many
Yeah.
manufacturers, with so many of us, with so many other artists like you. Because I mean, the who's who, it's there every single year. Like the Ray Ripley's, David Madero's,
No kidding.
Jason Becker from Art Junkies. Every one of these guys, we're all friends. They are there doing their thing, promoting their thing, learning. It's
That's what
like,
I do at Blade Show. I don't actually go as a vendor anymore trying to sell my stuff. I make a knife on the floor from vendor material and vendor equipment. So I just
yep,
go to the metal guys and I'm like, hey, can I have a chunk of your metal? And they're like, yep. And then I go to the forge guys and I'm like, hey, can I use your induction forge and your press to like forge out a knife? And then I go to the handle suppliers and I'm like, can I have some handles? And then the pin guy and then the glue guy and then the grinder belts and then grinder machine. And I just take videos of all this stuff as I go. And I don't know what I'm making when I go. I just see what
yeah.
happens. And it's so much
Well,
fun.
that's exactly it. And
I should go to Fab
um,
Tech and make a little tiny dragon.
You should. I mean, you'll see so many things. And again, just for someone like you, it's also at the end of the day, it's great different content, right?
Hmm.
That you can make content out of it. And definitely, I think you should try and check it out because it's definitely you'll be surprised of one day is not enough because
Yeah.
the building it's broken down and divided in 3 or 4 different sections. You have the metal fab, you have the technology, the super technology automation side, and all these other things. And but one day you can spend one day in one hall and still not see it all. It's that big of a show. But yeah, just you at some point you should check it out, man.
Will you be there this year?
I'll be there. So if you think of coming, just text me and let me know. Frank, I changed my mind. I think I'm going, and I can introduce you and to certain
I
yeah.
will. I will look. I know I think I'm already booked this year, but I'm looking at those dates, going, can I move anything around? But if I end up going, I will. But I'll look it up for sure for next year, and I'll put that on our calendar because I would like to do that. This year for Dragon Forge Experience in Texas, we're doing Warhammers.
Okay.
So at the Renaissance Festival, and the whole reason we have Dragon Forges anyhow is because they don't want modern equipment. Well, a coal forge is too slow to do the volume of customers that we want to do.
Yeah.
So my wife was like, well, just like take your propane forge, but build a dragon around it because they breathe fire anyhow. And what's crazy is when you have a forge, the flames that come out the front, we call
Yeah.
it dragon's breath. So it just made sense. And I'm like, okay, so we did that. Well, now we're bringing a forging press
Okay.
from Coal Iron Works. And so we have a 12-ton press. Well, we can't have a 12-ton press sitting out there. So my buddy David and I, who's largely known for Mad Dwarf Workshop, and him and his buddy Andy, who's now deceased, they made the Heimdall sword for the Thor movies, the hero
Oh,
version. Yeah,
nice.
so he works with us now, and we took this 12-ton press and we made it look like a mechanical dwarf. It's even got glowing eyes. I have them right here. I'm working on them. They're not plugged in, but I'm using these eyes from Adafruit. I got a box right here from
Yeah,
them. These are the eyes. I'm taking these to
that's
Texas
pretty
with
cool.
me, and they go behind green acrylic eye socket that I made
Screens or
with these
something. Yeah,
brass things all over the place. And its mouth is the press. So it's like
oh,
it's like a metal munching machine. It's literally eating the metal so that people can make warhammers. So this
that is
coming
pretty
weekend
cool.
will be the first Ren Fair where customers can forge warhammers from a press. So like that's the kind of thing I do is I take the
But
normal
that's how you
and I make
connect.
it
But that's
abnormal. Yeah, abnormal.
and that's the thing. People, let's face it, people just love cool shit. There's no
Hmm.
way
Yeah.
around it, right? That's
Hmm.
what it is. Like, and especially guys, we're
Yeah.
walking around and we hear or we see some fire or some metal being like, whoa, wait, what? Wait, let me
Yeah.
check that. We're
Yeah.
kids. We're kids. We just spend more money on the tools. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll
Yep.
send you some pictures of that too because that's a pretty cool thing.
No, please do.
Pretty
I'll
fun.
post it as we're talking about this whole thing. Now, what's the end goal, Josh? Like what would you like to be the end goal? And I'm gonna just give you a long short 10 years from now.
Sure. My plan all along has been to build up Dragon Forge locations to be stable and steady, and build up a run of seasons where they have consistent numbers.
I see.
Once I get it to that, I'd like to franchise or license out the locations and get out of Ren fairs. Um,
Okay.
I I have been actively writing stories for each of the dragons, and I've been writing the lore and the fantasy behind that world. So I'm trying to get a book or a graphic novel out, which eventually, if I can keep pushing my connections, keep pushing my creativity, perhaps I can get a Netflix show on it. I also have a video game for the second installment that when the story ends, you can continue to play in the world. And then
Damn.
there's like this end thing where there's a narrator and there's a whole new modern version of it that makes sense and ties in. And it's sort of the grand scheme of between the Dragon Wars, the Last Dragon Smith, and this narrator story. It's commentary on the world we live in that essentially we as humans make a really devastating mistake trading ease and convenience for quality of life or length of life. We
Yep.
reduce the length of our life. We make poor health choices and we make poor decisions just so that we can have things easier. And in the business that I run, I tell my guys all the time, easy is not in the brief. I don't care to make your job easy. Our job is hard.
Yeah.
I want good. And I also might want fast, but that diagram of fast, good, and easy or whatever, easy isn't on the list for me. I don't care to make your job easy. So anyhow, if I can segue toward my retirement years into more of the entertainment properties, I'll do that. But my wife and I are wanting to open up one or two more permanent locations, which
I see.
we're hunting down a couple right now. We've got a really cool location in the books. I can't talk about it yet because
I get it.
The deal isn't made, but it's we've got a couple big ones planned that will be furthering that story. And that's kind of what I want to do is on the back end, what she's working on is real estate investments in each location where we have businesses. So we've started to buy houses that we can do Airbnbs at, but when we're in that location for a Ren Fair, our crew has a place to stay. That is great. And then we can make money off of that. And if we can at least get 5 locations, then when we go away, we can gift a profitable house business to each one of our children that they can use to offset and take their businesses or supplement their life, because inflation is killing and you just can't. It's so hard to make it now that we really have to, if you're a parent right now, do whatever you possibly can to start setting up your next generation. Don't just live your life for you. Don't do what our parents did. Don't do what that generation did and burn it down and take it all with you. Pass it on.
That is so well said, and that sounds like a great plan, and I totally respect that, and I can. It's the right thinking for sure. Is the right thinking, and I want to thank you so much, Josh, for taking the time on a Monday morning and sharing just so much about your history and your journey into this trade. All right. I won't call it the welding industry, so you don't think that you're an imposter, even though you are, even though you're gluing things together. But you know what I mean? I think it's very important because I've always say, look, if we can just touch one person's life and say, and make a change and say, oh my God, I'm a interior designer, I'm a digital graphics guy, I'm whatever, but I also love the whole welding thing or the whole blacksmithing. I guess I can do it too. And that's why this thing it's here. Just to hey, you can do whatever you want. No one's saying that you can't.
That's right.
You are a perfect example.
You pick up that torch and tell your own tale with what you make, right?
There you go. Play on words. Love that. Yeah. But no, I thank you very much, Josh, for taking the time. I hope you think about maybe coming to FabTech so we can definitely shake a hand. I'm gonna check. Do you post the events when they are happening on your platforms? Because I would love to come and check out since I'm always traveling. Just one of the venues and see what you guys got going on.
Yeah, if you check Dragon Forge Experience, you can see where we're at. I try to get it through my personal social media, Josh A. Weston, which is what I use on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and whatever. And then, we post the dates there. We have it on our site. And if you're ever in the Michigan area, that's always open. I'm not always there, but that shop's always open. And if you let me know that you're traveling in Michigan or even in like London or Toronto, Canada, we're really not that far from there. It's just a couple hours drive. So if you're like swinging through there, and I think we're only like 3.5 hours from Chicago too.
Yeah, so everything you mentioned is my neck of the woods anyway. Like I'm always somewhere in that area.
Yeah, we're less than 2 hours from Detroit. So if you're in the Detroit area, really close to Saginaw, if you're going up through manufacturing district that way, we're close. Now, I would be happy to hook you up with whatever you wanted to do in the shop.
Cool,
awesome. And oftentimes, if my schedule allows it, I'll get on a plane and I'll meet you up there.
All right, sounds like a plan. Well, Josh, thank you again. And guys, this is how it works, because if you know how it works, if they keep saying yes, who am I to say no? And as long as my guests keep saying yes, you're going to see someone here, and you can hopefully learn from someone here as well. Josh, again, thank you so much. It means a lot. I'll let you know when the episode is coming out so we can do the thing. You know how that works. And take care. Thank you very much,
thanks,
Josh.
Frank. I loved it. It was great talking with you, and I hope to meet you in person soon.
Oh, for sure. We'll make that happen. Thank you.